I was recently struck by a series of images coming out of the protests in Iran. There's one in particular that captures the eye. A young woman, strikingly photogenic, leaning forward to light a cigarette. She isn't using a lighter. She's using the flickering flames of a burning portrait of Ayatollah Khamenei. There is a raw, almost cinematic grace to that moment, a quiet, defiant elegance that makes the viewer feel like they're witnessing a definitive turning point in history. But as I watched, I couldn't help but feel a sense of cynical detachment. For the progressive onlookers, this is a pure triumph of the human spirit. For me, it looks like the opening scene of a tragedy we've already memorized. We saw the same aesthetic fervor in Syria and Ukraine, and we know that behind the beautiful smoke often lies a decade of civil war, bread and circuses, and ruin. It is a high-stakes gamble where the freedom fighters of today can quickly become the organ-harvesting militants of tomorrow. What we are seeing might not just be a color revolution orchestrated by foreign intelligence agencies, but something far more ancient and terrifying. The Chinese have a term for it, the mandate of heaven. They believe that when a ruling power loses its moral right to govern, the universe itself begins to signal its displeasure. Sometimes through catastrophic earthquakes that bury hundreds of thousands, and sometimes through the sudden, inexplicable loss of fear in the eyes of the youth. When the symbols of a divine regime start providing nothing more than the fire for a comet or cigarette, it suggests the mandate is slipping away. The real question isn't whether the people are angry, they always are, but whether the heavens have finally decided to switch sides. To understand the chaos currently vibrating through Iran, Russia, and China, we have to look past the photogenic protests and into the cold, cyclical logic of how empires actually expire.
Wow. That's a heavy way to kick this off.
Well, it feels like a heavy moment. You see an image like that, and it's impossible not to feel something. But you're right. It connects something very immediate, very viral, to something that feels, I don't know, almost mythological.
But that's the point, isn't it? If we only look at the Twitter hashtags or the immediate political analysis, we're missing the deeper currents. We're missing the tectonic plates.
Exactly. And that's what I want to do in this deep dive. We've got a whole stack of material here, everything from academic papers out of the Institute of Chinese Studies to, Russian foreign policy journals, plus some really hard data on global infrastructure that is, frankly, shocking.
And the central question is, what gives a government the right to rule? In the 21st century, what is legitimacy actually made of?
Is it the ballot box? Is it a piece of paper, a constitution? Or is it something, heavier, more tangible?
And to get there, we have to start with that term you used, the mandate of heaven, Tianming.
Right. And let's be careful, because as soon as you say that, I think a Western listener, their mind immediately goes to, fantasy novels.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds like something out of Dungeons and Dragons or, The Chosen One from a movie.
Yeah, the heavens have chosen you.
Yeah.
But that's not it at all, is it?
It's a fundamental mistranslation, really. We hear heaven and we picture a bearded guy on a cloud, Zeus, or the god of the Old Testament.
Sure. A personality. An entity.
But in Chinese political philosophy, Tian isn't a person. It's closer to nature with a capital N, or maybe the natural order of things. Think of it less as a god and more like the laws of physics.
So the mechanism, not a conscious being who picks a favorite.
Precisely. And that's the absolute key difference between this and the old Western idea of the divine right of kings.
Okay, unpack that.
Well, in Europe, if you were King Louis XIV, your power came directly from God. You answered only to him. So if you were a tyrant, if you were incompetent, well, too bad for the peasants.
They just had to wait for you to die, and then God would sort it out in the afterlife.
Yeah. Your
legitimacy was unconditional.
Unconditional. And in a modern democracy, legitimacy is procedural. Yep. You won the election with 50.1% of the vote, so you get to be in charge. Even if you're a disaster, the process makes you legitimate.
But the mandate of heaven? It's conditional.
It is entirely 100% performance-based. It's like a job interview that you have to pass every single day.
So if you're the emperor or the general secretary, what's on that performance review?
Did you keep the peace? Are the borders secure? Is there food on the table? Is the currency stable? If the answer is yes, you keep the mandate. But if you fail, if there's a famine, if bandits are roaming the countryside, if the river floods and wipes out a province,
then the universe fires you.
It withdraws your license to rule. Yeah. And crucially, it legitimizes rebellion. It's not treason to overthrow a failed ruler. It's seen as, as restoring the natural order.
I saw a related concept in the research, Minben.
Minben.
What does that translate to?
Roughly, people-rootedness, or the people as the root. It's this ancient idea that the state exists for one reason and one reason only, to serve the welfare of the population.
But, and this is a critical distinction, it's not democracy.
Not at all. It's not about the people's voice. It's about the people's welfare. You can think of it like a tree. The people are the root. The state is the branches and leaves. If the branches stop drawing nourishment from the root and serving it, the whole tree withers and dies.
So if you're in power, your claim to legitimacy isn't your royal bloodline or your victory speech on election night. It's, did I feed the people? Are their kids safe?
Exactly. And here's where it gets really unsettling for a ruler. How do you know if you're losing the mandate? There's no approval rating poll. There's no scheduled election to worry about.
You have to look for signs.
You look for signs of displeasure from heaven.
Like, say, a catastrophic earthquake. The one that came up was the Tangshan earthquake in 1976. That story is just, it's mind-bending.
It's hard to overstate its significance. July 1976, a massive earthquake completely flattens Tangshan, a huge industrial city. The death toll was in the hundreds of thousands.
Now, in the West, our analysis would be purely scientific. A tragic tectonic event on the fault line. End of story.
Right. But in the Chinese political mindset of 1976, coming at the very end of the chaos of the Cultural Revolution, that was not just a geological event. It was a cosmic signal.
A verdict.
It was a verdict. It meant the mandate was passing from the Maoist era. The idea was that the Gang of Four had so disrupted the harmony of society that the Earth itself was, in a way, rejecting them.
It's a way of thinking that is so foreign to a modern secular Westerner. Do they literally believe the ground shakes because the politicians are messing up?
Literally is a tough word. It's more that in a holistic worldview, there's no clear separation between the moral universe and the physical one. They are interconnected. So deep corruption in the state causes disharmony that can manifest physically.
So when the Banqiao Dam fails in 75, which was another example, or a plague breaks out, it's not just a string of bad luck.
It's treated as evidence of moral decay at the top. The system is failing, and nature is sending you the receipts.
Which brings us all the way back to that young woman in Iran, the inexplicable loss of fear.
That's the social equivalent of the earthquake, isn't it? Regimes like that, they run on a kind of social gravity. It's a mixture of reverence for the symbols of power and, frankly, fear.
And when you see someone calmly, defiantly, using a portrait of the supreme leader to light a cigarette,
the gravity is gone. The field has collapsed. The physics that held that system together have broken down. It's the ultimate sign that the mandate has already walked out the door. Now everyone is just waiting for the building to fall down.
Okay, but here's the turn. We're not in the Ming Dynasty. You can't just claim the mandate with rituals and good harvests anymore. In the 21st century, it seems like the mandate needs to be made of something much, much harder.
It has to be made of steel and concrete.
Yes. We're moving from the mystical to the material. And to really grasp this, I want to zoom in. I want to try and see the world through the eyes of someone on the ground. I was reading these local reports from Guizhou province in China.
Guizhou. Perfect example. Historically, one of the poorest and most isolated parts of the country. All karst mountains, deep gorges, just incredibly difficult terrain.
Exactly. And I found this story about an elderly man, a villager named Lao Chen. For his entire life, his village was basically an island on land. A trip to the nearest market was an all-day ordeal on these winding, dangerous mountain paths. If you had a medical emergency, you were probably out of luck.
A life defined by friction, the friction of distance.
Right. Then the state shows up. And they don't just, pave the road. They build a colossal high-speed rail bridge that soars right over the valley his village is in.
I've seen pictures of those bridges. They look like something out of science fiction.
They do. And in the interview with Lao Chen, he never once mentioned ideology. He didn't talk about communism or GDP growth. He said something that just stuck with me. He described the faint vibration he can feel when the train goes over the bridge as the pulse of the country.
That is an incredibly powerful metaphor.
It is. For him, that bridge is the government's right to rule, made manifest. Because of that bridge, his grandson can get to a university in a major city in 3 hours instead of trekking for 3 days. The mandate isn't a theory, it's the fact that the train runs on time every time.
You've just perfectly described the modern concept of state capacity. This is, I think, the great dividing line in global politics today.
Yes, sir.
For a Western liberal democracy, legitimacy is primarily about process. Were rights respected? Was the election free and fair? Was there due process? For Lao Chen and for the planners in Beijing, legitimacy is about outcomes. It's about the conquest of friction.
Conquest of friction.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's what a state is for in this view. Poverty is a form of friction. Distance is friction. Disease, ignorance, isolation, they're all friction. The job of a government with the mandate is to use engineering, capital, and will to eliminate that friction.
And the sheer scale of their effort to do that is...
Yeah.
It's hard to get your head around. I pulled a stat for this. Since 2008, China has built over 45,000 kilometers of high-speed rail.
45,000. There is no historical parallel, full stop. It completely dwarfs what America did with the interstate highway system in the 50s and 60s.
And we have to ask the question, why? It can't just be for tourism.
Of course not. It's a statement. It's a projection of national will. It is the state demonstrating in the most undeniable way possible we have the mandate because we can physically bend the landscape to our design. It's proof of competence.
But there's another layer to it, a more martial layer that the sources are pointing to, the idea of dual use.
This is where things get really interesting from a strategic perspective. You and I, we look at a bridge and think about commuters or freight.
Right. Can it handle rush hour traffic?
A military planner looks at that same bridge and asks a very different question. Can this handle a column of main battle tanks?
Okay, let's get into the specifics on this because there was a number in the research that jumped out at me. 150 tons.
150 tons. That's the load-bearing standard that many of these massive new infrastructure projects in China are being built to. Bridges, viaducts, highways.
Why that specific number? I mean, a normal car weighs what, a ton and a half? A big truck, maybe 40 tons?
It's not for the civilian traffic. A modern main battle tank, like a Chinese Type 99 or a German Leopard 2, weighs somewhere in the neighborhood of 60 to 70 tons.
Okay, so that's still only half of 150.
But you don't just drive a tank with its treads down a highway for hundreds of miles. You put it on a HET, a heavy equipment transporter.
A giant truck, basically.
A very, very big truck. And when you put a 70-ton tank on a transporter that also weighs 30 or 40 tons, you're suddenly pushing well over 100 tons. So 150 gives you a very comfortable safety margin.
So if your standard civilian bridge is only rated for, say, 50 tons, you've effectively created a massive bottleneck for your own army.
You've checkmated yourself. And this is the genius or the chilling foresight of the dual-use strategy. China is baking military mobilization capacity directly into its civilian infrastructure. They are removing the friction of a future war before that war ever begins.
Okay, now let's contrast that. Let's look at the West.
This is where the idea of the paper tiger comes into play.
We have something in Europe called the military Schengen.
It sounds great, doesn't it? Very efficient, very modern.
The idea is that NATO forces should be able to move seamlessly from, say, Portugal all the way to the Finnish border, no customs checks, no bureaucratic hurdles, a single legal space for military movement.
It's a triumph of diplomacy and administration, a legal masterpiece.
And it's a huge but. The sources point out that you cannot drive a tank across a paragraph in a treaty.
You need a bridge, a physical bridge. And there was a report cited from the German Ministry of Transport, and it's frankly terrifying. It states that roughly 13% of Germany's federal highway bridges are structurally inadequate.
Inadequate for what? For civilian traffic?
No, inadequate for heavy military loads. If you tried to rush a division of 70-ton Leopard tanks across Germany today to reinforce the eastern flank, the report suggests you would risk catastrophic structural failure.
The bridges would collapse.
The bridges would literally fall into the rivers.
That's an unbelievable image.
Yeah.
The general gives the order to advance, the lawyers in Brussels confirm that you have the legal right of way, and then the whole column grinds to a halt because a bridge from the 1970s is crumbling.
That is the crisis of the West in one perfect, tragic image. We have a phenomenal software treaties, alliances, legal frameworks, financial instruments, but we are allowing the physical hardware of our civilization to rot.
While the East is operating on a completely different logic.
The logic is simple. If the bridge holds, the mandate holds. If the bridge rots, so does your claim to power.
So we have this pillar of physical capacity, the mandate of concrete. But you can't build a nationwide high-speed rail network with just concrete and steel.
Yeah.
You need people. You need brilliant engineers, planners, administrators.
You need a system for finding and promoting talent. You need a hierarchy.
Which brings us to the human component of the mandate. And I want to introduce another character from the research, A young man in Tehran named Arash. He's an engineering student.
Okay.
We tend to see Iranian youth through one lens right now, as protesters, like the woman in the opening. But Arash's story offers a different perspective. He was talking about his experience with the Concourse.
The Iranian National University entrance exam, it has a reputation for being absolutely brutal.
Brutal doesn't even begin to describe it. He made it sound like a combination of the SATs and the Hunger Games. His entire family's honor and future, he said, was riding on him passing this one test.
The pressure must be immense.
Immense. But here's the fascinating part. He wasn't complaining about the fairness of the test. He saw it as a legitimate gateway. He said he believes in the system's promise of intergenerational upward mobility.
But he's buying into the social contract.
He is. And he explicitly said he rejects the volatility of Western politics. He looks at the political whiplash every 4 years in the U.S., the constant protests and polarization in Europe, and he says he prefers a system that offers stability. He wants to know the ladder he's climbing isn't going to be kicked out from under him.
Arash is articulating the core appeal of what some political theorists like Daniel Bell call a just hierarchy.
Okay, just hierarchy. Let's pause on that because for anyone listening in the West, hierarchy is a dirty word. It's synonymous with oppression. Equality is the goal. So is this just clever branding for authoritarianism? We're not a dictatorship. We're a just hierarchy.
That is a completely fair and necessary skepticism. And of course, it's often used as propaganda to justify oppression. But to understand the ideal that someone like Arash is buying into, we have to try to see it from the inside.
Go on.
The argument is this. Liberal democracy is pretty good for deciding local issues. Who should be on the school board? Should we build a new park? But for running a complex nation-state of 1 billion people, do you really want the person who is best at winning a popularity contest in charge of the nuclear arsenal or long-term water security?
Or do you want the person who has spent 30 years as a water resource engineer?
Precisely. So the deal, the meritocratic deal, is this. The people give up their right to choose the top leaders. In exchange, the state guarantees that the people running the show are the smartest, most competent, most experienced people available.
A meritocracy.
In theory. It's sometimes described as a vertical democratic meritocracy. You have democracy at the bottom for local issues where local knowledge matters. Arash can vote for his city council. But as you move up the pyramid of power, elections are replaced by examinations, performance reviews, and decades of proven experience.
But the whole system rests on one gigantic assumption, doesn't it?
That the people at the top actually are the most meritorious.
Yes, that's the Achilles heel.
It is, because let's go back to Arash. He spends his entire youth studying, he sacrifices everything, he aces the concours, and then he gets to his dream job interview and finds out the position was given to the supreme leader's nephew, who couldn't even pass the exam.
The deal is broken.
The entire system is revealed as a fraud.
And that's not just, oh, that's unfair. In a system based on the mandate of merit, that's a profound betrayal. It's a violation of the cosmic order.
Exactly. In a Western democracy, if a politician's unqualified son gets a government job, it's a crime. It's nepotism. It's corruption. In a meritocracy, it's a theological crisis.
A theological crisis?
Yes, because it proves the hierarchy isn't just. It's just a lie. It proves that the people in charge aren't the best and brightest. They're just another gang of thugs who seize power. The merit is a sham.
That puts the massive anti-corruption campaigns we see, especially in China under Xi Jinping, in a totally new light. I always saw them primarily as a convenient way to purge political rivals.
And I'm sure there is an element of that. But it's much deeper. It's an act of theological maintenance. He is desperately trying to restore faith in the system. He has to convince the millions of Arashes and Lao Chens that the meritocratic ladder still works, that competence is still rewarded.
Because if Arash stops believing in the fairness of the exam,
he doesn't just become cynical and drop out, he picks up a rock. Or he goes looking for a lighter and a portrait.
he goes to the street.
He goes to the street.
Okay, so we have the mandate of concrete building things. We have the mandate of merit ensuring the best people are in charge. Now we need to turn to a third and maybe the most primal form of the mandate of survival, which takes us to Russia.
Russia is a fascinating case because it doesn't quite fit the other two models. They aren't building infrastructure on the same insane scale as China, and their meritocracy is, let's say, notoriously compromised by corruption.
They're playing a different game.
Yeah.
And to understand it, I want to look at it through the eyes of a woman named Yelena from a story I was reading. She works in a metallurgical plant in the Urals.
The industrial heartland of Russia, the Rust Belt.
Exactly. And her perspective was, to my Western ears, deeply jarring. She was talking about the war in Ukraine, about the Western sanctions, about Russia's global isolation, and she wasn't angry at her government.
What was she?
She was relieved.
Relieved how?
She kept talking about industrial stability. She has these vivid memories of the 1990s after the Soviet Union collapsed. They call it the wild 90s. She remembers the hyperinflation, her factory closing, the gangsters who basically ran her city, the total chaos and humiliation.
The near-death experience of the Russian state.
Right. And for Yelena, this new multipolar world isn't some abstract geopolitical theory. It's the simple fact that her factory has orders, her pension gets paid, and she doesn't have to worry about shootouts in the street. She'll trade abstract freedoms for that baseline of safety.
What you're hearing is the voice of civilizational realism.
Okay, let's define that term, civilizational realism.
It's the direct counterargument to the Western idea of the global village that dominated the post-Cold War era. For 30 years, the dominant story was that we were all converging. We'd all become liberal democracies, borders would become less important, we'd all trade and get along.
And Yelena isn't buying that story anymore.
Russia as a state isn't buying it. And the key thing to remember is they tried to buy it in the 90s. There's this concept of delegated hegemony. After the USSR fell, Russia basically applied to join the West. They were willing to be a junior partner, regional manager for Eurasia under American leadership.
But they feel their application was rejected.
They feel it was thrown back in their face. They point to NATO expanding right up to their borders, the bombing of their ally Serbia, the color revolutions in their neighborhood.
From their perspective, they saw a pattern.
The pattern they saw was that the West didn't want them as a partner. It wanted to dismantle them, so they pivoted. The new Russian mandate isn't about integrating with the world. It's about insulating the civilization from the world.
And this explains the obsession with buffer zones. We look at a country like Ukraine and see a sovereign nation with the right to choose its own destiny.
A civilizational realist looks at Ukraine and sees a limitrophy.
A limitrophy. That's an old Roman imperial term.
It is, a borderland. The best modern analogy is the crumple zone of a car.
A crumple zone.
Think about it. When you engineer a car, you deliberately design the front end to collapse and absorb the energy of an impact, to protect the passengers in the core of the vehicle.
So Russia sees countries like Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, as its civilizational crumple zone.
Exactly. If a hostile alien civilization, which is how they view the modern West, crashes into their sphere of influence, the buffer zone is meant to absorb the shock and collapse, preserving the core, Moscow.
That is a brutally cynical and tragic worldview for the millions of people who happen to live in that crumple zone.
It's pure tragedy, but from Yelena's perspective, inside the car, the sacrifice is necessary. She sees Western cultural influence as decadence, as chaos. She prefers the stability and predictability of a walled garden, even if it's a bit grim. The mandate for her is simple. The state proves its right to rule by protecting the civilizational core from foreign contamination.
It's a return to an almost medieval logic. We'll build the fortress walls high, we'll man them, and in exchange for your freedom, we'll keep you safe from the barbarians outside.
And in a world that feels increasingly chaotic and unpredictable, that offer of safety and order is incredibly potent.
Okay, so let's pull the lens back. We've got the East pouring concrete at a historic pace. We've got Russia building civilizational walls. They are acting, they're building, they are securing, they are moving. And then we look at the West. If the modern mandate is about the capacity to act, why does it feel like we're paralyzed?
Now we have to talk about winter.
As in winter is coming.
No, as in winter is already here. The sources bring up Oswald Spengler, the German historian who wrote The Decline of the West a century ago. He had this biological theory of civilizations. They're like organisms. They're born, they have a vibrant youth, a mature adulthood, and then a long, slow decline into old age.
And he made that crucial distinction between culture and civilization.
That's the key. For Spengler, culture is the springtime of an organism. It's the creative, expansive, youthful phase. It's when the West was building Gothic cathedrals, discovering new continents, writing Faust. It's dynamic, spiritual, and often violent, but it's alive.
And civilization is?
Civilization is the winter. It's what's left after the creative soul has died. The fire goes out and all that's left is the machinery. We stop creating new forms and just endlessly replicate and manage the old ones. We stop exploring and start regulating. The vital energy freezes into bureaucracy and administration.
We go from the age of the artist and the explorer to the age of the lawyer and the compliance officer.
You've just summarized 1,000 pages in one sentence. And this winter phase, this late civilization, has a specific political disease. Spengler didn't name it, but Francis Fukuyama did. He called it vitocracy.
Vitocracy, the rule of the veto.
It's a political system where so many different groups and individuals have the power to say no that it becomes impossible for anyone to say yes and actually do something.
The sources had a story that illustrated this so perfectly, it was almost painful to read. About this local administrator in Europe, let's call him Elias. He has a simple, necessary task: reinforce an aging bridge. The military says it's vital for national security. The Chamber of Commerce says it's vital for the economy.
Should be straightforward. A few months of work, maybe a year.
It took nearly a decade to even break ground. First, an environmental impact study was required. This study had to map the migratory patterns of a rare species of beetle that lived near the bridge.
A beetle?
A beetle. That process alone took 3 full seasons, 3 years. After they finally cleared the beetle hurdle, the local town council passed a new noise ordinance, restricting construction to a 4-hour window in the middle of the day.
Okay.
Then, a single landowner, whose property was along the planned detour route, filed a lawsuit claiming the potential dust from the increased traffic would lower his property value, and he got an injunction.
The beetle, the council, and the landowner, each one holds a veto. This is the vitocracy in action. In the East, the state says the bridge is necessary, and if your house is in the way, your house is gone. In the West, everyone has a weapon to stop everything.
And the cost of this paralysis isn't just time, it's an absurd amount of money. The source pointed out that to build 1 mile of subway in New York City now costs, on average, $3.9 billion.
$3.9 billion.
For 1 mile.
That is just, it's a number that doesn't make sense. It's exponentially more expensive than building in Paris or London, let alone Seoul or Beijing. And it's not because the geology under Manhattan is uniquely difficult. No, it's the vitocracy tax. It's the accumulated cost of all the lawsuits, the consultants, the community review boards, the endless studies. We have built a system that prizes the perfection of its process over the achievement of any outcome.
There was a term for this in the research: survival of the unfittest.
Yes. Think about the perverse incentives it creates. If you're an honest engineer and you go to the government and say, this bridge will realistically cost $500 million and take 7 years, you'll be laughed out of the room. You won't get the funding.
The sticker shock is too great.
So the system forces you to lie. You have to engage in what's called strategic misrepresentation. You say, oh, we can do it for $100 million in 2 years. You know it's impossible, but it's the only way to get the project approved.
So the liars get the contracts and the realists are sidelined.
And then inevitably, the project runs 5 times over budget and takes 3 times as long, and the public becomes even more cynical and angry. We stop believing that we are even capable of building great things anymore.
It creates a kind of learned helplessness on a civilizational scale. We just manage the decay.
That is the Spenglerian winter, a vast, complex, wealthy civilization that has become so tangled in its own rules and procedures that it has frozen itself solid. It's incapable of decisive action.
It really forces you to turn the question around. We started by looking at a burning portrait in Iran and saying, their mandate is slipping. But maybe the real story is looking at a crumbling bridge in Germany or a $4 billion a mile subway and asking, is our mandate slipping?
I think they are both slipping, but for opposite reasons. In the East, the mandate is threatened by a crisis of moral legitimacy. The hierarchy is proving to be unjust. In the West, the mandate is threatened by a crisis of physical capacity. The system is proving to be impotent.
Which brings us to the final idea from the sources. This concept of the wolf moon.
A wolf moon.
It's a metaphor for what they call the year of the jackpot. This idea that different historical cycles are all aligning at once, suggesting a massive shift is underway.
There's that famous opening line from the Chinese epic Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The empire, long divided, must unite. Long united, must divide. It's the idea that history is cyclical. It breathes in and out.
And it feels like we are in a great moment of division. The unified, globalized world is fracturing. On one side, you have these civilizational states, China, Russia, and others, that are trying to secure their mandate with concrete, with control, with walls.
And on the other side, you have the West, the vitocracy, which seems paralyzed by its own internal contradictions, unable to act decisively.
It's a collision between a system that values results above all else and a system that values process above all else.
So where do we go from here?
That's the question, isn't it? The mandate of heaven isn't some mystical force. It's a cosmic feedback loop. If a system delivers stability and prosperity, it survives. If it delivers chaos and decay, it falls.
So if the West wants to make it through this winter, it has to find a way to break the paralysis. It has to learn how to build again. And if the East wants to avoid going up in flames, it has to realize that bridges and trains aren't enough if the people feel the system is a lie.
The Chinese sages believe that when the mandate is lost, the universe signals its displeasure through chaos. We look at the rotting bridges of the West and the burning portraits in the East, and we have to ask, in a world that is rapidly moving from abstract agreements to raw physical reality, which civilization is actually prepared to survive the coming winter? Perhaps the real danger isn't that the heavens are switching sides, but that we have forgotten how to look up and read the signs.